USA Basketball just dropped practice footage that sent the internet into absolute chaos. And here's what nobody's talking about. They knew exactly what they were doing. One clip, one single moment from an entire practice session. Paige Bueckers hitting a shot over Caitlin Clark during a routine defensive drill. That's all it took to turn two fan bases into warring armies in the comments section. But let's be very clear about what actually happened here. Because the reactions you're seeing, they're not organic. They're engineered. USA Basketball has an entire practice session worth of footage. Caitlin draining her signature threes, Cameron Brink protecting the rim, elite players making elite plays. Instead, they chose the one clip guaranteed to ignite a fan base war, and it worked perfectly. The comment section exploded within minutes. Paige fans celebrating like she just won Finals MVP. Caitlin fans rushing to defend her, pointing out it was just practice, that she's been recovering for 5 months, that one possession means nothing. Both sides dug in, both sides attacked, and USA Basketball sat back and watched the engagement roll in. Here's my question for you, and I need you really thinking about this. When did we stop celebrating great players working together and start turning every single interaction into manufactured drama? Drop a like if you believe we deserve better than social media manipulation disguised as basketball content. Because what USA Basketball did here, it's calculated, and we need to talk about it. After 5 months of waiting to see Caitlin Clark play competitive basketball, this is what we get. Not game footage, not scrimmage highlights where something actually matters. A practice drill, one defensive possession where an offensive player scored, which happens literally thousands of times in every practice session at this level. But USA Basketball understood the assignment. They knew which clip would generate the most engagement, the most comments, the most shares, and they chose chaos. Let's filter out the noise and look at what this really reveals about where basketball discourse has gone. We've reached a point where organizations are actively manufacturing controversy because tribal warfare generates more attention than actual basketball analysis. Think about that. The people running USA Basketball social media sat in a room, reviewed practice footage, and made a deliberate choice to post the most inflammatory clip possible. Not the most impressive, not the most informative, the most divisive. And the fan bases took the bait immediately. Comments flooded in with pettiness that would be embarrassing if it wasn't so predictable. Paige is finally excited to win something. That's unnecessarily cruel toward a player who's dealt with devastating injuries throughout her college career. Paige thought Caitlin was on her team because she turned the ball over so much. Referencing college matchups that have nothing to do with a practice drill at Team USA camp. The tribal loyalty is off the charts. But here's what gets lost in all this manufactured controversy. Both Caitlin Clark and Paige Bueckers are incredibly talented basketball players who are at this camp to help Team USA prepare for international competition. They're not enemies. They're teammates working toward a common goal. The idea that we need to turn every single interaction between them into some kind of definitive statement about who's better is exhausting and completely missing the point. Let me tell you what actually matters from that practice footage. Caitlin looked sharp. After 5 months away from competitive basketball, recovering from knee injuries that sidelined her for most of the WNBA season, she was moving well, shooting with confidence, playing defense with energy and engagement. For someone who went straight from an epic college season into the WNBA with no real break, then suddenly got forced to the sidelines by injury, the fact that she looks remarkably ready to compete at a high level is the real story. Multiple analysts noted how engaged Caitlin stayed with the Indiana Fever throughout her injury. That mental challenge of sitting out when you desperately want to compete is brutal. But she remained visibly connected with her team, supporting from the bench, staying involved. That speaks to maturity and professionalism that often gets overlooked when people are busy arguing about practice clips. The footage also showed Caitlin working on defense multiple times. The narrative that she's a defensive liability has followed her throughout her career, often unfairly. She's not an elite defender, but she's not the turnstile, Some critics pretend she is either. The fact that she's clearly focused on that end of the floor during Team USA practice suggests she understands it's an area for improvement and wants to prove she can hold her own against international competition. Paige being at this camp is significant too. She's coming off her own injury struggles, trying to rebuild her reputation as one of the elite players in women's basketball. The hype around Paige when she first got to UConn was massive. She was supposed to be the next great face of the sport. Then, injuries derailed her trajectory. By the time she was healthy again, Caitlin had become the dominant force in college basketball. That's not Paige's fault. Injuries happen, but it creates a dynamic where she's trying to reclaim spotlight that shifted while she was sidelined. One shot in practice doesn't accomplish that, but it gives her fans something to celebrate and amplifies the rivalry narrative that USA Basketball clearly wants to promote for engagement purposes. And that's the problem. We're not getting authentic basketball content anymore. We're getting content designed to trigger emotional responses and generate comments, regardless of whether it reflects reality. Let's be very clear about what this practice clip actually shows. This was a defensive drill, not a one-on-one game, not a scrimmage with something on the line. A routine drill where players work on specific skills and situations. Paige got a shot off and hit it. Caitlin was playing defense. That's the entire story. Elite offensive players score on defenders all the time. That's what happens when great players compete. Sometimes offense wins. Sometimes defense wins. One possession tells you absolutely nothing about who's better, but nuance doesn't generate engagement on social media. Hot takes and tribal loyalty do. So USA Basketball gave the fan bases exactly what they knew would create maximum chaos. They posted the clip. They watched the comment section turn into a war zone. And they profited from every single angry comment, every defensive reaction, every tribal attack. Many of you have been saying this for weeks in the comments, and you were onto something. The way basketball content gets packaged now has nothing to do with analyzing the sport and everything to do with manufacturing conflict. If you're tired of organizations weaponizing fan bases against each other for clicks, so drop a comment below. Let's start a real conversation about what we actually want from basketball coverage. Because here's what's really happening. USA Basketball isn't naive. They understand the dynamics between these fan bases. They know about the rivalries, the college matchups, the attention that comes from even the appearance of drama between Caitlin and other top players. When they posted that specific clip, they made a calculated business decision. Controversy generates more engagement than excellence. Tribal warfare drives more comments than thoughtful analysis. So that's what they delivered. The comments proved their strategy worked perfectly. Rational discussion went out the window within minutes. One commenter, actually being level-headed, said that, as a Paige fan, if anybody's raving about her cooking Caitlin in this clip, they don't know basketball and are just weird. That's actually the correct take. Practice footage of one possession proves nothing. Both players have scored on each other throughout their careers. That's what elite offensive players do. They make shots, even against good defenders. The reference to Paige loving a good pump fake is accurate. That's part of her game. She's crafty, skilled, knows how to create space and get her shot off. Caitlin has her own arsenal. The step-back three, the pull-up from absurd range, the ability to shoot off the dribble from 30 feet. Both are highly skilled offensive players who can score in multiple ways. Treating one practice shot like it's a definitive statement about who's better completely misses how basketball actually works. What's frustrating about this entire situation is that we finally got to see Caitlin playing actual competitive basketball after 5 months of waiting. Not shooting off a rack in an empty gym, not working out alone, actually going against defenders, making reads, competing in drills that simulate game situations. That should be the story. Caitlin is back and looks ready. Instead, the story became one practice shot and the ensuing fan base war in the comments. The footage showed other players too: Cameron Brink, Kelsey Plum, Angel Reese, Chelsea Gray, hobbling along as she recovers from injury. Juju Watkins observing from the sidelines. There's legitimate talent and interesting storylines throughout this camp, but none of that generates the same engagement as Caitlin versus Paige, so that's what gets amplified. USA Basketball made a choice about what narrative to push, and they chose drama over substance. Someone asked why Sabrina Ionescu wasn't at this camp, which is a fair question. Sabrina is one of the best players in the WNBA and has been part of Team USA before. The answer is probably that USA Basketball is going younger with this particular camp, bringing in the next generation who will represent the country in future competitions. That's why you see Caitlin, Paige, Cameron Brink, Juju Watkins, players who will be carrying Team USA for the next decade. The comment about Paige being excited to finally win something was unnecessarily cruel, but it reflects the toxicity that exists in these fan-base battles. Paige has dealt with devastating injuries that prevented her from achieving what she should have in college. That's not something to mock. It's actually tragic that such a talented player lost so much time to injuries. But online discourse doesn't reward empathy or perspective. It rewards hot takes and tribal loyalty. So, we get people dunking on Paige for one good moment in practice, or people dunking on Caitlin for getting scored on during a drill. Nobody wins except the social media platforms that profit from engagement, and USA Basketball, who got exactly the viral moment they wanted. Regardless of the cost to actual basketball discourse, connecting the dots reveals something uncomfortable. The footage of Caitlin shooting her signature step-back three was satisfying to watch after 5 months without seeing it in competitive situations. That move is why she's special. The range, the quick release, the confidence to pull from anywhere past half court. USA Basketball acknowledged it's her signature move, which shows they understand what makes her unique. They could have built their social media content around celebrating that. They chose differently. Seeing Caitlin and Aaliyah Boston together at camp makes sense given their Indiana Fever connection. They have existing chemistry that translates to Team USA. Having teammates you're already comfortable with makes adjustment to a new environment much easier. That's a legitimate storyline worth exploring. So is the fact that college players like Juju Watkins and Lauren Betts are at this camp observing and learning, getting exposure to the level of play they'll need to reach to make future rosters. But all of that context and nuance gets buried under fan-base warfare about one shot in practice. That's where we are with women's basketball discourse right now. The sport is growing. More people are paying attention. But the conversation is often reduced to tribal battles, rather than actually appreciating the basketball. And organizations like USA Basketball are actively encouraging that dynamic because it serves their engagement metrics. Reading between the lines, this is about more than one practice clip. This is about how basketball gets packaged for consumption in the social media era. The most inflammatory content wins. The most divisive narratives generate the most comments. Thoughtful analysis gets buried under hot takes, and fans get trained to view every interaction between players as a zero-sum competition rather than teammates working together. The reality that everyone refuses to acknowledge is that Caitlin Clark and Paige Bueckers are both incredibly talented players who make each other better by competing against each other. Their rivalry, to the extent it even exists, elevates both of them. The best players want to compete against other elite players because that's how you improve. Iron sharpens iron. That's not a revolutionary concept, but it's apparently too nuanced for social media. USA Basketball posted one clip of Paige Bueckers scoring on Caitlin Clark during practice, and the internet immediately turned it into World War III. One shot in a drill became proof of superiority, depending on which fan base you ask. But here's what actually matters. Both players are at that camp representing their country, working to get better, preparing for international competition. That's the story. If you're tired of manufactured drama and just want to appreciate great basketball, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell, because we're going to keep cutting through the noise and talking about what actually matters. Next video, we're breaking down what this Team USA camp really means for these players' development and why the actual basketball is far more interesting than fan-base warfare. Until then, remember that the best way to support great players is to actually watch them play and appreciate their skills, not to turn every interaction into tribal warfare. Stay locked in.